It's so nice that today, particularly after last week, and we've seen, harrowing scenes the week beforehand of the synagogue attack in Manchester, the horrific celebrations of that on our streets Saturday a week ago, and again this Saturday, by the supposed pro-Palestinian mob who are just simply anti-Israel and anti-Jew. Call yourself pro-Hamas, call yourselves what you actually are. And then last Tuesday's anniversary, second anniversary of the October 7th attacks, and again more celebrations on our streets. Today, finally, we are seeing proper, genuine celebrations. Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, across every street in Israel, the joy at the return of the 20 remaining live hostages. What are your thoughts?
Well, good news has been in short supply for 737 days.
38 today.
So these people have spent in the most appalling conditions. Already the footage that we are seeing shows emaciated faces, shows faces that haven't seen daylight in almost 2 years, over 2 years. And can you imagine the ordeal that each and every one of these hostages has gone through? To not know each day if you're going to die, to be kept in a tunnel underground in the most appalling of conditions. And of course, 28, more than are coming home alive, were murdered by Hamas during their time in captivity.
Plenty others as well, but we've already had those bodies back.
And so this is a day, I think, in which of relief, but also I think for so many of those families, and of course you spoke to a guest last week who didn't know if their son was dead or alive.
And unfortunately, when we spoke to him, Tamir Nimrodi is not on the list of live or dead bodies coming back. And we spoke to his mother, Herut, last week. So we just don't know. Also, a Nepalese student, Bipin Joshi. These names, they're just, no one knows what's happened to them. And we may never.
But I want to punctuate the good news to say to say something that I think needs saying about the lies that have been told over the past year, the past 2 years. We were told that Benjamin Netanyahu would never do a peace deal because he was determined to keep it on to save his own political skin. Lie. In fact, he secured his objectives and he was so prepared to do a deal that he released 100 Hamas terrorists for every single hostage he got back. So I don't want to hear any of that. We were told that we needed to be carting around sucking up to these people in order to get a diplomatic deal. Lie. Donald Trump, a president we were told was deeply dangerous, was far too aggressive, lacked the temperament to be president of the United States. Lie. Went in there, showed strength and negotiated a peace deal. And we were told that Hamas was broadly a nice enough organisation trying to run it. In fact, we saw even in their dying moments, the last stand of Hamas, they went in there with the hostages and these so-called so-called Gazan civilians that were moping around all of a sudden happened to all have AK-47s. It's amazing how obvious it is to identify who's who when Hamas have decided that when they've got a temporary ceasefire. Every single thing we have been told about this war by the BBC, by the Foreign Office, by the so-called experts has been total and utter hogswash. It was a nonsense, and it played into the hands of those who have been prosecuting a consistent agenda of Jew hatred. And some of them, by the way, who have told the ultimate lie that they were there for Gaza, they were there for the civilians. Well, we're going to see that was a lie. When are we going to see it? Because they're going to be still out on the streets, still protesting, still showing support for a now dismantled terroristic organisation.
Well, they're not dismantled. No, they're not dismantled. That's the thing. And what's really interesting is we have seen execution squads. Hamas being very open about this, executing some of the clan leaders, because there's lots of different organisations vying for control in Gaza. Blatant open executions. It's on film. Even the BBC has noticed it happen. I think there's a point where, enough people are messaging about this and there's enough video. You have to actually take the footage. I mean, they claim things are true and they haven't even got any videos when Hamas has just told them to say it. So they may as well. This is, it is very, very blatant what is happening. This is going to descend into absolute chaos. Also, here's the thing. despite all these people messaging, I survived the genocide. These are really quite healthy-looking people. They're healthier than a lot of people I see in Britain, and they have, quote, survived a genocide. And all these people who are talking about, like, the starvation. There are so many people looking, you know, we couldn't get food in. Oh, let me look at your lovely new big Mercedes that you're wheeling around doing the hot rods. I mean, come on. This is an absolute joke. What did you make about Starmer joining world leaders in Egypt? We have some reports now that Netanyahu is going to join those leaders as well, Macron and others. And it's a load of world leaders who are apparently going to stand there and witness this peace plan. They've had sod all to do with it. The claim from Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, I mean, utterly laughable on TV yesterday, that Britain had played a vital role. The only role they played was basically to undermine any negotiations by rewarding, that was the word that Hamas used, rewarding Hamas for October the 7th and holding hostages, saying we'll recognise the Palestinian state without even the most basic requirement of humanity, which was to hand back the hostages they had taken. I mean, what do you make of this? Because you had the US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. He's a serious player. He's he's not just a golf buddy, you know, serious player. He called the UK government delusional. A public tweet saying that Bridget Phillipson's comment was delusional. And then we get a tweet from Steve Witkoff, the international envoy and golf buddy of Donald Trump, where suddenly, you know, just basically talking about, yes, the important role that Britain had played and praising it. And I would like to acknowledge the vital role of the United Kingdom in assisting in and coordinating efforts that have led us to this historic day in Israel. In particular, I want to recognise the incredible input and tireless efforts of National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell. This is not a normal thing to be happening. Why has that happened?
What cheeses me off about this most is that in international diplomacy, when you've got a good relationship with another country, and we have with the US, obviously had Donald Trump and had him in Windsor Castle and all the rest of it, you get to call in some favours, some. But that number is finite and discrete. And boy, oh boy, do we have some favours we need from the US right now. We need them to continue helping us with security. We need some trade help. We need help on all manner of issues. But instead of getting any of those, instead of asking for a help with something that was going to benefit the country,
British people,
Keir Starmer has called in a favour to save the neck of his own national security advisor, who is in hot water because he has sabotaged the trial of two men charged with spying on behalf of an enemy of this country in Parliament. And we are having to call in favours to get him off the hook. It is disgusting, it is despicable, it is unpatriotic to allow yourself as National Security Advisor to be prioritised above the interests of this country. And that is what has happened. Behind the scenes, we won't find out because these things are always kept secret. We won't find out. But in 40 years' time, when the records are released, I can tell you, guaranteed, 100%, take it to the bank, put your bets on now at any good high street bookies. We have requested that as a special favour through diplomatic channels. It is wrong because that should have gone to do something that would help secure British jobs, to make us more secure, to do everything else. It's wrong, it's appalling, and it shows that this government is not just a joke. I mean, it's actually working against this country's interests.
Absolutely an embarrassment that we've not played an important role. And again, it's one thing, you can play a role or not play a role, but when you're playing a role actually helping the enemy of our ally, the democratic nation state of Israel. That is quite something. Of course, we saw, and as I predicted last week on air, and as I wrote in my Sun column last Friday, these Palestinian marches, pro-Palestinian, would not stop. They're all now saying, well, you know, it was to end the genocide. There wasn't genocide. There isn't genocide. And the bombing has stopped. So move on. Oh, and the BBC reporting, you know, we want more aid in. BBC reporting breathlessly yesterday that aid trucks are going. What, you mean like they've been going in for months? I mean, again, they've been going in. You know, these we know what famine looks like. We've seen it on our television screens horribly in many, many places over the years. We can see it right now in countries not that far from Gaza. And yet, you know, apparently these perfectly healthy-looking people on the streets are we supposed to pretend are starving to death. It's just a load of abject lies and nonsense. But the pro-Palestinian marchers back out on the streets. They're free Palestine. Well, free it from what? I would say free it from Hamas. Once again, we have pro-Jewish protesters, people holding "We Stand with Britain's Jews" placards, being led away, being arrested,
Yep.
when those chanting from the river to the sea, which means the annihilation of Israel, it's a Hamas slogan, they were fine, they were left. We had some guy, and we do need to make this guy famous, hasn't been identified publicly yet, as far as I know. It's a young man who, well, apparently he's an Oxford student. Oh, gosh, I hope it's Oxford Brookes and Oxford University. It's very embarrassing. But he's... sorry, apologies, someone's talking... I'm sorry, someone's talking to me in the air. I have no idea what they're saying. OK, we've got we've got the clip, apparently. So let's play a little clip of what this delightful young man was saying.
I don't want to yap for too long, but a chant that we've been workshopping in Oxford that maybe you guys want to join in. It goes, Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground.
Right, so the clip we finally got on. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in. Zios, short for Zionists, right? So people, well, it's short for Israelis, brackets. It means Jews. It does mean Jews. But it also means people like me, people like Sam, who support the right of Israel, for Jewish people, to have their own homeland. I mean, he's saying, put them in the ground. That he's calling for people to be killed. That's what he's calling for. He's an Oxford student, apparently, on the streets of London, openly calling for people with a microphone, for people to be killed because of their nationality, their race, their religion, or their political beliefs. Sam, forgive me, I may be confused. I thought that was illegal in this country. I thought that was a criminal offence. And you and I are big free speech campaigners, but that doesn't extend to calling for people to be killed.
Yeah, well, a few things. Firstly, come on then, mate. I'm here. I'm a Zionist.
Yeah.
Anytime you want.
Oh,
anytime you want.
I'll finish at 1. Come on down.
Come and have a go, and we will see who ends up on the ground first. I won't put you in the ground, but I can assure you you'll end up on the ground. Secondly, we have
to point out that would be in self-defence, just for the lawyers listening.
Secondly, we have people arrested at marches in London, the capital city of this country, for holding totally peaceful signs that say, stand with the hostages. We have people, there have been a multitude of people who've been arrested for just looking Jewish, frankly. At times we saw a police officer.
Openly Jewish.
Openly Jewish. And yet that is not punished. There is something going deeply, deeply, deeply wrong with our policing. It is absolutely transparently two-tier. Everybody in this country can see it, and it's going to lead to a dark place because the public are losing massive amounts of trust in our institutions. But thirdly, if you remember nothing else about these so-called protesters, hate marchers, remember this. They started before Israel conducted the war in Gaza, and they're going to carry on afterwards.
They started while people were still being slaughtered and gang raped and burnt alive with their children on October the 7th.
They like it when Jews get killed.
They applied for the march permits. Yeah, and when you join that march, even if you're one of the good people, you just really are genuinely concerned about innocent civilians in Gaza. If you join those marches, you're joining the hate mongers. Organise your own marches to sort of campaign for peace, campaign against Hamas. You'd be doing them more good, you really would. Let's also talk about the China spy case. We touched on it in relation to Jonathan Powell. Kemi Badenoch is demanding the Prime Minister addresses what she calls the unanswered China spy case questions. Again, we've got claim and counterclaim. It does seem to be very, very clear. Anyone who knows anything at all about this case is saying the Prime Minister's advisor, the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, that name again, or someone else somehow got involved, we're told, not with the substance of the issue. We're told by Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. By the way, love, stop doing the Sunday round. You're an abject disaster every time you go on air. You really are not up to the job. But basically was involved in the decision to basically have to drop this spy case. And it's very, very clear. The Prime Minister is blaming the CPS. Bridget Phillipson blaming the CPS. The Crown Prosecution Service, it's not, they did, all the last government, they didn't have the evidence that China was an enemy state. You can't charge someone, by the way, the two men who alleged do deny any guilt, that you can't allege someone as spying for an enemy state if they've not been designated an enemy state. The former Director of Public Prosecutions, the current Director of Public Prosecutions, head of MI6, former security ministers like Tom Tugendhat, open statements in Parliament are making it really clear that the last government, at the time of this alleged spying, absolutely regarded and spoke about in terms of China as an enemy, hostile state. It's an abject nonsense. There's been political interference without a shadow of a doubt in this trial, and the reason behind it is what we need to know. Is it because, as is claimed today, that we have basically got a country, a government that is totally beholden to China, huge amounts of debt? Has there been a deal done that £1 billion in debt, or £1 billion in something that a Chinese steel company wants to claim from the government over losses, that they will drop that on behalf of the Chinese government in return for approval for the Chinese embassy, which would be within my eye line here from this office? What is going on? Because it does seem to me that not only has Keir Starmer sold Israel down the river, he's selling Britain down the river right now.
Yeah. Everybody in the country, everybody with a nose, with eyes, with ears, can smell a great big rat here. The CPS does not just drop cases randomly. We know, because it's been reported so comprehensively that I can only assume half of Labour's ministers are actively briefing against the government on this, that there was a dossier compiled by the security services on the threat China poses to us. And they were utterly convinced that if you showed that to a jury, any jury in this land would conclude China is an enemy of ours. And of course they are. I mean, for starters, we know, not even just with these individuals, but with other cases, they're spying on our parliament, they're harassing our naval vessels, they're hacking our networks. Countries that do that are foes, not friends. But this government, China, you've got to remember, is a bit like a great geopolitical boa constrictor. It has slithered its way up into our space as a much bigger adversary, and now, having got in here, it is slowly tightening and tightening and tightening in the hopes of strangling us off. That's what it did last week when it clamped down on exports of rare earth metals that we're massively dependent on them for. And rather than fight back, rather than trying to peel them off from tail to head, this government is going limp like a pathetic little rat in the jungle, and it's going to kill them. It's going to kill us, because China, let me assure you, is the biggest geopolitical threat we have faced, not just in the last century, but ever. This is massively bigger than the Soviet Union. And yet our government seems to be in this delulu, as the kids say, cuckoo land, in which it thinks it can get some investment
as for
off them.
Cameron and Osborne, I mean, as for numerous leaders of our country, we have a problem. I mean, we have a serious problem with our elites are selling us all down the river. We really, really do need to get to grips with it. So much more to talk about. We want to take Donald Trump's speech to the Knesset in the Israeli Parliament when he does get up and speak. Just amazing jubilation scenes across Israel, roads being lined with people, those Israeli flags, those yellow ribbons, and just held aloft, as we have seen with the arrival of 20 living Israeli hostages, the final living hostages in Gaza, held by Hamas. They have been released back into the hands of the Israelis, many of them now, the first 7 already with their families who've not seen them for 2 years. 2 of the hostages, by the way, are identical twins, 2 men held captive separately who've been reunited for the first time. Now, Simon Calder joins us as well. He's travel correspondent at The Independent. And let's talk, Simon, about the new EU border checks that we've heard so much about for so many years, delayed and delayed and delayed. Now they have actually come into force. What are they, and what will they mean for us here in the UK?
Yes, very exciting times here, exactly as we've requested. And this, of course, goes back to Brexit, because we knew that the entry-exit system would be coming along. We negotiated to be third country nationals, and starting yesterday, we began to get exactly what we asked for. And this is what you find at Prague Airport, which is the biggest airport where you are seeing these checks going ahead. You get off the plane, you see all these tall kiosks scattered almost randomly around the airport. You go up to one, you put your passport in with the with the business page about who you are and all that sort of stuff. It then comes up with a picture and your birthday, and it says, "Is this you?" And you say, "Yes, sorry about the photo." And then you get on on and you do the finger, you get a proper facial biometric. Then you have to scan the 4 fingers of your right hand, then your left hand. Then you're asked a whole bunch of questions about whether you've got enough money. €66 a day in cash they want, or a credit or debit card, accommodation, a return ticket, and travel insurance. Then, well, once you've cleared all that, and I timed it as about 3 minutes it took me, you then go and do the check actually in the old analogue way, with an actual person sitting there having a look at your passport and saying, right, OK, I'm going to stamp this passport. So it's double red tape. That will continue until April.
And the key thing here is, I mean, different countries in Europe are implementing it differently. Obviously, most people in Britain, they travel to Spain, they travel to France, but particularly in the summer. This has been done in the autumn, nice bit of time to get it done. But I could understand, like, oh, well, let's bring it in slowly. And there's when we haven't got huge numbers of people travelling. And now I'm going to have to interrupt. I do apologise, Simon Calder. We're going to have to leave that there because I think Donald Trump is actually now about to speak, long-awaited speech in the Knesset, in the Israeli Parliament. So we're going to have to leave that. I do apologise. Hopefully we'll try and come back to you. But let's go straight live now to Israel.
אני מתכבד להזמין כעת את ראש האופוזיציה, חבר הכנסת...
Not actually speaking yet. I'm not quite sure what the delay is. There's been so many different people. And in fact, right, let's go back. Is Simon Calder still there? Can we go back to Simon Calder?
Yeah.
Simon, I do apologise. I've got the footage up. Basically, I mean, pretty much everybody in the world is speaking before Donald Trump. There we are. Apologies there. I can understand, bringing it in gradually over a period, because it was supposed to come in just before the Paris Olympics. The French went, oh, no, let's not do that, and upset all our American visitors. So here's the thing. We're not going to be... It's not just aimed at us. It's aimed at anyone. If you're not in the EU, then you have to do that, or in the other countries that they allow. You're not going to do this. But is it going to be the same every single time? Or once you've done your biometrics, will you get to go in a different queue? So you're not queuing behind, an entire family with 8 kids who next July are doing it for the first time?
No, it's going to be slightly easier. So the thing, Julia, that I think people find really awkward and perhaps intrusive is fingerprinting. That's something we've not typically done. Of course, if you've been to the US, you've probably had your fingerprints taken on arrival there. But it's awkward, it's difficult, but you should only have to do it once, because once they've got Julia Hartley-Brewer's fingerprints stored and your facial biometric, they say, we know who that is. And even if you turn up with a new passport, we'll say, that's Julia. Her passport photo really doesn't do her justice, but it's very nice to see her. And you will just get the facial biometric check. So probably fingerprints only once, but no extra queues. You are going to have a 2-tier system where EU nationals, including Irish passport holders, speed through, and the rest of us join up. And I've been picking out where the worst queues are going to be. I predict Paris Charles de Gaulle between 5:45 and 6 a.m. You've got 9 wide-bodied flights coming in from right across the world, with mostly people who will need to go through these checks.
And that's good. Now, different countries are implementing it differently. We know also ports are going to be one of the bigger problems, because there's a limited amount of space, and we've seen when the French decide not to put too many customs officers on their passport office on their side, that's when we get difficulties. But people have been told to wait, expect to wait up to 4 hours in these queues initially.
Well, there's all kinds of warnings. The Port of Dover says, yep, we're going to get, we've invested lots of time and money in this, and we're going to do it right. But Dover at the moment, starting yesterday afternoon, is just weird. If you're on a coach, you go to Dover Western Docks, no ferries from there anymore. You go into a building, a bit like a big shed. You do your biometric thing, you get back on the coach, it is then sealed, and then in the manner of driving through East Germany, between West Germany and West Berlin, the coach proceeds magisterially through the town of Dover. Nobody can get on or off, and then you go through the normal stuff when you get to the ferry. So it's going to be quite lively. Every port, there's 1,800 frontier points in the Schengen area. All of those have to do things, but they can all do them a bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's going to take a while. But I was just hoping that, OK, once you've done it once, whether or not the rest of your Britain and America have done it, once you've done it once, can you then join a quicker queue? You don't have to go and...
all that's going to happen is that that you will... You might be able to speed past the people who, for the first time, are filling
doing their bio. That's the thing is, if you've done it, I always wonder. We travel a lot. Oh, is it going to be worth it? Do we all just, try and do a quick trip over while it's quiet, get it done, and then next time you're travelling, it'll be fine. But not an option for most people. But a lot of people who travel for business, it might be a big deal. But again, if only we could have someone to try and negotiate the peace between us and the EU. Here's the thing, though. We were told that with good relations with the people. With the EU, under Keir Starmer, we wouldn't face any difficulties. But I'm sure this is all still, Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, mine and every other Brexiteer's fault. But hey, don't want to be in the EU. This is the price. Here's the thing, though, Simon. If they don't want us to visit, maybe we won't visit anymore. That might be an issue for them. Right now, though, let's talk about what on earth is going on back home and why did we see the collapse of that Chinese spy trial and why is everyone pointing the finger at number 10 for doing it? Let's talk to Professor Anthony Cleese. He's a security intelligence expert and joins us once again to try and make head nor tail of this story. Good morning to you, Anthony.
Good morning, Julia.
More development. We spoke with you about this last week, but more developments over the weekend in terms of fingers being pointed at the current government and particularly the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, for the collapse of this Chinese spy trial. Give us a little bit of background and what is the allegation now?
Okay. I mean, the whole thing is entirely preposterous. And, I'm somebody that has a lot of respect for Sir Keir Starmer. I'd vote for him, but he's our elected Prime Minister and he's a senior lawyer.
Yeah.
And yet I've never seen such a pig's ear being made of a totally straightforward thing. So when the alleged offences were committed, we didn't have the July 2023 National Security Act passed by the previous Conservative government, which kind of slightly fiddled around with the definitions. We had basically the 1911 Official Secrets Act, which is a very broad act, and I can even read to you what it says. It says that anybody who makes any sketch, plan or model or note which is calculated or might be or is intended to be directly or indirectly useful to an enemy is spy, traitor, you choose the word. It's entirely clear. It's about the intention of the person passing on the information. It's not about the intention of the enemy or the potential enemy. Indeed.
But the point is that the Prime Minister, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, he's now in sort of clashing with the current Director of Public Prosecutions and indeed another former one, pointing out, he's saying, no, the trial collapsed, he said, because we at the time China wasn't designated a hostile or enemy state.
Doesn't have to be.
That's not true, is it?
Well, you could say, if you want to find out if China is a hostile power or not, let the trial go ahead. That's what the trial was meant to show, in part. But you do not have to have a designated enemy. It's not the enemy, it's an enemy. Yeah. But it's about the intention of the person passing on the information. And the first conviction against a German spy in 1913 was secured a year before we went to war with Germany during the Cold War. Countless people convicted under the Official Secrets Act for spying for the Soviet Union. Yeah. We weren't at war with the Soviet Union. Yeah. No, the government is talking total nonsense.
We are dancing on the head of a pin on this, aren't we? Well, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, she has demanded that Prime Minister addresses unanswered questions related to this case, but in particular wants him to address them in Parliament. Now, we've had lots of little statements. And again, the crucial thing is if you are addressing Parliament, you are required to be telling the truth. I can see some rinky-dink little lawyer speak that he'll able to have. And we've had Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, on air yesterday talking about, no, Jonathan Powell had no role in any of this. No role in the substance of this, she said. And again, leaving the way open. But what do you suspect actually happened?
Well, what I suspect actually happened was that Jonathan Powell, and a lot of credit is due to him for the work that he's done, Northern Ireland, now the Middle East, as President Trump and Steve Witkoff have said, undoubtedly he would have been asked for a view as to whether we thought the Chinese would like being on the receiving end of an espionage trial. And from all we know about Jonathan Powell, he's likely to have said, well, I don't think President Xi would be very happy about it. But that actually is neither here nor there.
Yeah.
This is about national security. And if I may add one other thing, we're also seeing this in connection with the Chinese plan to build a super embassy in Royal Mint Court. Now, there's something very odd and very fishy about that too. Not just because it would be the largest Chinese embassy anywhere in Europe. I mean, it's an absolutely massive building, but because the Chinese have already bought the building in 2018 for £255 million. Now, that is completely contrary to the Vienna Convention of 1961, which regulates how embassies are doshed out by the receiving state. No foreign power, including the United States, owns their embassy. America owns the leasehold on the embassy, but doesn't own the embassy.
Yeah.
But China owns the embassy.
And the crucial thing, it's right near Tower Bridge. It's going to be built over cables that are crucial for the city. Tower Hamlets Local Council said no. And there are now lots of reports over the weekend that actually this was basically they basically reapplied for planning with a nod and a wink from the government that it will get approval, even though everybody's got a clue about security for this country, financial, military, diplomatic, has said this is insane, it mustn't go ahead.
It is insane. It mustn't go ahead. China should not be allowed to buy its embassy in the UK. It should not be allowed to build a super embassy because we know what the Chinese do.
Well, indeed.
And the trial would demonstrate to everybody whether or not people like me and the chairman of the Joint Intelligence Committee, for goodness sake, who said in 2023, China's spying is worldwide. There is an undoubted threat. Let the trial go ahead, then we'll find out.
Absolutely. I must remember the two men who have been accused of spying have both denied that. But again, if the trial has collapsed from political interference, we have a right to know. And again, everything being blamed on Jonathan Powell. But at the end of the day, we keep having the Prime Minister having his aides getting up to things they shouldn't be getting up to, and then they leave, and then he carries on. And there comes a point when maybe we should just, make a judgment about Keir Starmer based on the company he keeps and the people he hires. It is a happy week. I mean, my God, we've gone through some horrible weeks recently, particularly with the savage terror attack on a mosque in Manchester. Horrific marches ever since the roads in our streets. I mean, just the blatant, horrific racism, anti-Semitism that we have seen on our streets in recent weeks is really, really shocking. But we had some hope yesterday, and we saw the release of all 20 remaining living hostages held by Hamas in Gaza back to Israel. I mean, I've got to be honest, I'm clearly addicted to the videos. Having been to Israel, and it is impossible, as I said so many times, to escape the pictures. You recognise the faces. You've seen these faces. You've heard these names. You've read them. They're on every street corner. They are everywhere. There are ribbons everywhere. Every single person in Israel knows someone affected by October the 7th. Every single person in Israel knows someone who has been involved in the war in Gaza, because children, they're 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they are conscripted and they have to serve. So it was a huge day, not just for the families, but it was a huge day for the entire country. And we did see that love for Donald Trump. That was not being faked. That was from opposition and the government, the parties in government as well, alike, for Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday. But now it's the morning after the night before. We didn't get all 28 bodies of those who's murdered by Hamas back. Only 4 have been returned. That is a breach of the peace deal, phase 1 already. But what do you make of where we go next, and any hopes, given that the footage we've seen coming out of Gaza, there's a load of people looking very healthy, saying they've survived genocide and famine, but also Hamas carrying out mass executions of their enemies?
No, it's a reminder that even though phase 1, it seems like, has been secured, even though there are details which are still to be drawn out, that there's still a lot of road to run. And I think that was always going to be the case. I think the great kind of diplomatic coup that was pulled off here was simply to get Hamas to agree to rescind the hostages, to send them home, and without Israel having to completely withdraw from Gaza. You basically had Hamas realise, under significant pressure from the Arab and Gulf states, that they'd run out of road, and that if anything, they're continuing to hold on to the hostages could actually be to their detriment rather than to their negotiating.
Yeah, they didn't do it
strength.
out of, you know, goodwill.
Exactly. And so it's worth dwelling, though, on what wonderful scenes we did see yesterday. Not only the individual families who were in floods of tears of joy because people that they'd, you know, in their darkest moments probably thought would never actually come back, who had been living in the most inhumane conditions, in the most hellish conditions imaginable, actually returned to them. But the way in which the whole nation welcomed them back is a reminder of, first of all, what began this war to begin with. It was the murder of civilians, it was the sexual assault of civilians, and it was the taking as hostages of civilians. And it was a reminder of that, even though this has been a horrendous time for everyone involved, that I'm sure many people in the IDF will feel like this is worth it. We got them back. Yeah. This is what this war was about to begin with.
No man left behind. I mean, that is a very strong feeling. I mean, there were three things that particularly, I'm going to go with irked. I don't think I can use other words on the radio about a lot of the coverage yesterday and commentary on social media. One is they look pretty well. You know, we had that, didn't we, about previous hostages, particularly female hostages being returned. We saw, you know, some of these hostages. David, you know, he saw him emaciated. We saw him digging his own grave emaciated. Those pictures weren't faked, they were real. These people were starved and tortured and beaten. We know people are being held underground for like 2 years, not seeing daylight for 2 years. And people saying, oh, well, they looked okay. Yeah, they'd been feeding them. They knew that the optics of this were going to look bad, and they'd been feeding them at risk to their health, actually, to give them too much food after being starved for so long. But then people also making comparisons, and I heard this, that was a BBC report I mistakenly listened to yesterday, and I thought I'm thinking, oh, they're talking about these family reunions and how wonderful it is, and these aren't no longer prisoners, they are fathers and brothers. And I went, hold on a minute, they're talking about the Palestinians being released by Israel. Now, I'm sure that Israeli prisons aren't very pleasant. If there has been torture, I'd absolutely want people being, you know, held to account for that, and absolutely a lot of the claims being made. I mean, we have to take some of them with a pinch of salt. Hamas lie every day. That's what they do. Terrorists, it's what they do. But I mean, but you know, they're talking about wonderful these people back. You look up. There was one report. This man, he served 20 years behind bars, not seeing his family. Well, he's actually only served 6 years because he's been charged and found guilty of 5 different murders in terror attacks. So yeah, that's why he was behind bars. I mean, it's a really good way of not getting put behind bars. Don't commit terror attacks. It works for the rest of us, which I did just find absolutely extraordinary. But also just the equivocation, the whole sort of, you know, the hostage. Often BBC referred to a hostage exchange. Yep. It's not a hostage exchange. Hostages taken, and then prisoners given as a ransom payment. But also just talking about them as if they were the same. Families on both sides. No, these people were held behind bars in prison, even the detainees. When we're at war, we have detainees in our prisons too who are not held after trial and not charged. It's a very unfortunate part of war. It really is. But the idea that these people were held in the same conditions, and then the whole like, well, you know, a lot of these men, and again, it was men, not women, a lot of very ill-informed people trying to do the right thing, saying, isn't it awful the women didn't survive? No, the women have already been released. Some women died in captivity, but the women have all been released. They were prioritised because of the concern we know is legitimate about rape and other abuse they were getting. But it's just this equivocation I just found utterly repulsive.
I know, and it's one of those things that you almost could predict it, couldn't you? There's always this temptation when on the part of the supposedly mainstream media, to try and create a kind of false equivalence between Israel and Gaza, between Israel and Hamas. If anything, it sometimes cuts it further in the other direction. You would think that it was almost the Israelis who were being unnecessarily extreme in their pursuit of these hostages and so on and so forth. So this we're kind of accustomed to by this point. I think the only thing that you would hope is that there would be some kind of reassessment after you saw the hostages returned, because of the fact that it was abundantly clear the kind of way in which they've been treated, the short memories people tend to have for getting those images of emaciated hostages in Hamas's tunnels being forced to humiliate themselves and dig their own graves, that just because they've been fed up for a couple of days to try and make them look slightly more presentable for the international news media, that why are Western trained journalists so gullible in the face of what is such transparent propaganda? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Are they gullible, or do they know what they're doing? And that's the thing. thing. Like the protesters on our streets, I mean, it is extraordinary. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, interestingly, in the comments, where she's actually been giving a statement about the terror attack on the Heaton Park mosque. Mosque. I keep doing that. Apologies, Heaton Park. Genuine apologies. Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester, and she said protests have continued both before the peace agreement and after the peace agreement in the Middle East. I think we can conclude that not all of those protesting truly wish to see peace in the Middle East, but that is for them to answer to what their motivations really are. We are very clear that while the right to protest is a fundamental freedom in our country, enjoyed by people of all backgrounds and often the cause of grave offence to other people who live within this country, it does have to be balanced against the right for all people to be able to live in safety. Now, we're talking about these un-British pro-Palestinian protests that went ahead 2 days after the Manchester attack. I mean, you and I feel very strongly about freedom of speech and about the right to protest, and I defended for at least a year, you know, the right of these people to protest. I didn't like what they were doing, but you have the right to protest, but you don't have the right to make death threats. No. And that's what we're hearing on our streets.
No, of course, it's one of those things where the right to protest is crucially important, and it's something that we should defend even when it's people that we find despicable exercising that right. But often people are demanding the right to do things which no one recognises as legitimate. And also, I think at the very least, we shouldn't hold back in our condemnation of these people. The willingness to hold demonstrations on the day of the Heaton Park synagogue attack.
It told us a lot.
Exactly. Which what it told us, which is that they know that whilst they present this as just advocacy for Palestine, or in the case of that particular demonstration, this is about Greta and the flotilla. They know that if you go around waving Palestine flags and beating drums about genocide on a day in which Jews have been murdered by someone who had those ideas in his head, who held those people as responsible ultimately.
So I think the police think he may have been, that a man called Jihad may have been
his motives
influenced.
are so unclear that we are just speculating. But nevertheless, it's quite clear that a large part of these demonstrations is to taunt and to humiliate Jews. They pretend this is purely about Israel-Palestine.
Exactly.
That's clearly not the case. And I'm sorry, people getting upset when these marches get labelled as hate marches. If you're constantly going on demonstrations in which people are repeating Arabic war slogans about the 7th century murder of Jews has always happened, if you can never have one of these Saturday demonstrations without someone somewhere holding up a swastika. If you look at when these first erupted, there was about 5 groups were involved in them, and according to a Telegraph expose, 2 of them had quite close links to Hamas. One of them was co-founded by a former Hamas chief who lives in London for some bizarre reason. I think we're within our rights to call them hate marches.
I think we are. Well, I mean, wonderfully, we have actually been able to identify, with the help from people, the sleuths on social media, this delightful young soul. Let's have a little watch and a listen of this student. This is a student at Oxford University who was at a march in London with his microphone openly calling for death. Well, I'm assuming he includes me and Tom in this. Let's have a watch and a listen.
I don't want to yap for too long, but a chant that we've been workshopping in Oxford that maybe you guys want to join in. It goes, Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground.
Zios, code for Jew. It's code for Jew, but it's also, let's be generous and say it's just Zionists. Okay, so Israelis, Jews who believe in the Israeli state, and people like you and me and many of our audience who accept the right of the Jewish people to have a nation state. He's calling for us to die. That's what put them in the ground means. He's been identified as an undergraduate student at the University of Oxford at Balliol College. One of the very good colleges as well, you know. And his name is Samuel Williams, and apparently he's from Tunbridge Wells.
Of course he is.
Of course he's from Tunbridge Wells. Of course he is. From the mean streets of Tunbridge Wells, where he grew up, no doubt, on the similar sort of housing estate as Bob Villan of the Bob Villan fame. I mean, it's genuinely. I mean, you couldn't make it up. But as I've messaged the Metropolitan Police, they have messaged me back. I'd like this person arrested and questioned. I mean, these are death threats. These are clear death threats. This goes far, far beyond what we've heard from, I don't know, let's give an example plucked from the thin air. Lucy Connolly, who wrote a horrible, horrible message. Burn the asylum hotels down with them in them, for all I care. It's not the same as go on, do it. He's calling about people being killed and buried. That's what he's calling for. It's a death threat.
And how did we get into a situation where this has just become the stuff of sort of upper middle class, edgy protest?
Edgy.
I use that phrase kind of slightly advisedly because they almost treat this as if it's just kind of provocative and interesting and countercultural.
It's cosplay in his little cafe.
And yet this cosplaying involves blood-curdling, anti-Semitic calls for murder. How do we get to this point? I mean, like, it's one of those things where obviously we should reserve our eye for the individuals involved and that they deserve all of the brickbats coming their way and all the consequences coming their way. But there's also a kind of question about this younger generation of people who kind of think of themselves as really radical and progressive and interesting.
They're the good people.
The good people, the right side of history, have become so comfortable with barbarism, with anti-Semitism, with they almost get a kind of frisson from it. Like there's almost a kind of arms race going on between them as to who can be the most outrageous in the chants that are being produced. And I think the Bob Villain thing is kind of set.
I know what he's doing to himself when he watches that video back. No, you just know, don't you?
It's sickening. What they're saying is sickening in and of itself, but the fact that this has just become a kind of subculture where they're trying to outdo themselves as far as how much they can.
Yeah, well, they need. I mean, again, freedom of
speech
doesn't include death threats. Just your reaction to the Trump peace plan, the Israeli hostages coming home, exchange with prisoners held in Israel, and you know, Donald Trump basically hailing, you know, this is the start of, you know, peace in the Middle East. You've been following this stuff for a lot of years, and the West, Britain, and other countries getting involved. How hopeful are you?
Well, about as hopeful as it's possible to be with a problem like the Middle East and the attempt by countries like Iran to wipe Israel off the face of the map. And I don't think that has gone away. It's just that they've had their noses rubbed in it a little, in some cases, in the case of Iran, quite violently, and especially Hamas and Hezbollah, who are their cat's paws. However, I do think that this is a chance because it's the rest of the Arab world that counts in this particular negotiation. And the Abraham Accords, for which Donald Trump got precious little credit in his first administration, have borne fruit. And all we need now is for Saudi Arabia to come publicly to the party. And we have a pretty well full house of Arab states who are sick to the back teeth of IS brutality and murder and slaughter, and the resulting poverty that's inflicted on the Gaza and the Palestinian area. I think there is a reason for hope here, and I think that I think that this will go down. It'll taste bad in the mouths of those who detest Donald Trump, but this is a remarkable breakthrough that has to be given full credit to Donald Trump.
Well, indeed, I mean, the 20-point plan, a lot of it was, you know, what was on the table under Biden. But again, these require a sort of force of character and energy to actually get through and banging of heads together. And I do think a lot of this comes down actually to what's changed since Israel did take out the nuclear threat was Iran, and also that attack on Qatar. Everyone says, oh, it was a mistake. No, it wasn't. It was a reality check for the Qataris and others that Israel's reach was further than they had feared. But one of the things I think is extraordinary is actually Donald Trump yesterday. Yeah, there was a lot of crowing. He was doing his victory lap. It may be a little bit too soon, but he got the hostages out. Full stop. He got the live hostages out, and that was the number one thing for Israel at this moment. But it's absolutely amazing. Flying over on Air Force One, attending, you know, the Knesset, going off to the peace summit and the signing in Egypt. He was on stage pretty much the entire time, speaking for a lot of hours. The energy levels, he's chatting to journalists on Air Force One on the way back to Washington. This is a man, you know, in his early 80s, for goodness sake.
Well, it's amazing. And I mean, he is known, believe it or not, as a workaholic. He's up in very, very early in the morning and he works late at night, unlike Joe Biden, who had an afternoon nap and he was in bed by 9 o'clock. Yeah. That dynamism is bearing fruit in all sorts of ways. I mean, we're full of admiration, I think, or we should be, for what's happening in Gaza and Israel. But there is more to Donald Trump than just this. I mean, the economy in America is booming. We're all benefiting from that. So, I mean, will he end up on Mount Rushmore as one of the presidential greats? Well, I think that he's probably got his He's probably got people carving out his statue.
He probably has. And again, if this doesn't work out, the Nobel Peace Prize should be his. And again, if he was Obama, if he was Biden, he would have been a shoo-in and he'd have got it. Obama got nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize before the first 6 weeks of his presidency, when he'd achieved absolutely zero, and arguably, with his failures on Syria, arguably caused more deaths as a result of US inaction than any government before him. Let's also talk about what happened with Keir Starmer in Egypt and Sharm el-Sheikh. On the stage, all these world leaders turning up. And let's play a little clip, because it's joy to watch, where Donald Trump sort of ushers Keir Starmer forward on the stage. Enjoy, everyone.
United Kingdom. Where's United Kingdom? Where's our friend? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
It's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice. And I think it's fantastic. And we have so many others, and just so many others. And
you cannot help but smile every time you see that. I mean, our Prime Minister, he couldn't remember his name. Where's our friend? Couldn't remember his name. He's standing at the back, sort of, frankly, Trump had just been yapping on for quite a long time, as he did in the Israeli Knesset as well. And then he's called for it. He obviously thinks, oh, God, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be asked to say a few words. And then he's just left standing and Trump just carries on. I mean, ritual humiliation. And isn't it terrible that we're actually enjoying it, as opposed to being outraged that our Prime Minister was humiliated in this way? But mainly because we know he despises all of us. He despises our country. So we don't care if he's humiliated.
Well, I think we despise him in return in bucket loads. And frankly, I don't think that was an accident by Donald Trump. He knew exactly where our Prime Minister was standing. He knew exactly what he was doing when he turned away from him, looking like a stray potato on a plate. I think that that was perfect. It was perfect time. And my estimation of Donald Trump rose almost as much on that as it did on the release of the prisoners from Gaza.
He knew exactly what he was doing. I mean, some of the things that Donald Trump was saying, I know everyone here, I love them all, but I don't love them all. There's ones I don't love. But, you won't have, I'll never tell you who the ones I don't like. Well, maybe you will find out. I mean, he was just riffing, having fun, enjoying his moment in the sun. But back home, there was also politics going on back here. And we had the Home Secretary, Shebana Mahmood. She was giving a statement to the House about, basically the abject failures that we have seen to stop the terrorist who killed two at a synagogue in Manchester a couple of weeks ago. And she did talk about these so-called pro-Palestinian protesters. And she said, some of them who've carried on protesting since peace in the Middle East, since the ceasefire deal, since the aid's gone in, there is no genocide, there's a ceasefire in place, the things they've been calling for. She says some of them don't want peace in the Middle East. Did you welcome those remarks?
Well, I think that you can't legislate against stupidity, can you? And I think that these marches, which have been an absolute abhorrence for the people of the capital city of London, every single Saturday almost throughout the last 2 years, should have been stopped at the outset. And they certainly should be stopped now that there's nothing left to protest over. As you said earlier, there's a whole shopping list of things that they want, but they've all been settled, at least for the moment. There is peace, there is a ceasefire, the prisoners have been released. Yep. And so what are they protesting about?
Yeah, I mean, it's really that simple, isn't it? And what do you make of the, we've got this sort of little Oxford University student, and now identified as Samuel Williams of the mean streets of Royal Tunbridge Wells, chanting Gaza, Gaza, make us proud, put the Zios in the ground. A clear call for Israelis, Jews, those like me who support the right of Israel. I am a proud Zionist to exist, to be killed. I mean, it's blatant. It's very, very blatant. What do you make of this going on our streets and the police just standing by, listening and watching and doing nothing?
Well, what the opposite of that is the fact that he's basically calling for the support for Hamas. This is what the ultimate result of what that protester is calling for is a triumph for Hamas in the slaughter of innocent Israelis. And it's almost impossible to imagine what is going through the minds of these people as they ignore or completely resolutely refuse to examine the evidence of what happened on October the 7th, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it was appalling. It makes you your eyes water just reading it, and they've totally ignored that and are blaming the Israelis for defending themselves.
Yeah. And they're still, I mean, they're still claiming that, you know, women weren't raped, weren't mutilated. I mean, it is just extraordinary, the lies people will tell themselves, and every single one of them should be forced to sit down and watch the full, unedited evidence of what actually happened. And by the way, we know it happened because it was filmed by Hamas and live streamed on Telegram and other social media formats. I mean, there is no doubt about this. It's extraordinary. Let's also talk about something I've got no doubt of, that we're not going to be able to actually reform the European Convention on Human Rights. British ministers say they've won the backing of more than a dozen countries, including, you know, big players like Germany, to reform the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, basically looking for ways to curb illegal migration. More than 16 countries support our moves to change the way the courts interpret the convention, because, of course, it's been used again and again, ridiculous interpretations of the articles, particularly to privacy and a right to family life, to basically prevent them being deported. Do you have any hope whatsoever that these changes will take place, given the activist judges who were involved in these cases?
It ain't going to happen, and if it does, why should we applaud these countries for coming so belatedly to the conclusion that this is a deliberately corrupt system? And in any case, here in Britain, we could very easily remove those judges who are giving away the freedom to stay in this country to people who blatantly do not deserve it. And on any pretext whatsoever, they simply make something up about whether or not their kids like chicken nuggets or something equally
I know, we
stupid.
keep using that example because it is so absurd.
It is. And also the Albanian crime gangster who had a cannabis factory owner who has not been sent back to Albania because his daughter would not have a male role model. I mean, what sort of role model is that?
It is utterly ridiculous, isn't it? Well, look, these days, illegal migrants, and Boris Johnson has been giving his tuppence worth again. I mean, sorry, does this man want to come back, or is it just me? But he's basically saying that it was Rishi Sunak's fault for not putting the Rwanda policy into place, and that's why we've had this wave of illegal migrants. Don't blame him. He's also basically said, oh, we didn't expect so many people to come in the Boris wave. Those are the legal migrants, and one of the years under which he had responsibility for the visas that have been given out under his watch, where we had 1.2 million people arrive, some 900,000 net arrivals to this country under that wave, people who are here right now. And he's saying nothing to do with me, Gov. I mean, it's laughable, isn't it?
Well, I think that Boris Johnson is congenitally incapable of admitting that he's wrong, even when he's caught red-handed with his hands in the safe. I mean, look, you've got to remember that it was Boris Johnson who was arguing for
an amnesty.
An amnesty for those who had already arrived, which would have meant not only that tens or hundreds of thousands who were here illegally would remain, but it would act as an even bigger magnet to all those who thought that the moment they set foot on these shores, they would simply remain. I mean, no, Boris is guilty as charged.
Absolutely. I'll put the question to you, I'm putting to our audience. You know, are you more concerned about the economy or immigration, given these two, you know, Chancellor Rachel Reeves off at the IMF in Washington, these not good figures from the IMF at all, and the Home Secretary, Sharma Mahmood, speaking at a conference in London today, basically admitting we've got completely wide open borders. What are you more concerned about?
The economy. I think voters care about both. I think voters care about the economy more. And ultimately, a lot of our crises come down to that. Cost of living is what matters to most of us. You know, there is a lot, the bills are going up a lot higher than the wages. You know, I'm noticing that. I'm sure you are. I'm sure everyone who's listening is. You can't fix cost of living without fixing the economy. I think that's the number one issue. And let's be honest, it doesn't look great. Immigration matters to people, but look, this government, let's say by magic they fixed immigration overnight. If they didn't fix the economy, they're still getting booted out. This
is true. It's the economy, stupid, as a senior advisor to Bill Clinton said in one of his election campaigns. That's what, it's the pound in your pocket. And everyone, I don't care, rich or poor, is noticing how much prices are going up. And the IMF are predicting they're going to continue to go up. Inflation is going to be among the highest of the G7 countries. But it also pointed out, you know, these figures on growth. Our growth in living standards is among the lowest. But also, crucially, although we do have some of the highest growth, and Rachel Reeves is very big, we've got some highest growth growth in the G7 countries, when it's per capita, when it's per head of the population, because we've had millions more people arrive in this country, it's not down to a great, wonderful high birth rate. It's because we've imported a load of people. Our average, our per capita growth has gone down. Now, you're someone who's been massively in favour of immigration, with free movement between us and the EU, absolutely not an issue. Many on the left very much in favour of pretty much free movement from any country. If free movement, if immigration on a mass scale we've seen since Tony Blair onwards is so good for our economy, why doesn't our growth go up more? And why, when it's measured per head of the population, doesn't it look higher? Because if these people are all contributing and they're all high earners and they're all so skilled and they're all contributing and making our lives better and richer, why are we poorer?
Well, they're not. I mean, we haven't done immigration in the better ways we can do it, and immigration has not been a silver bullet that saved our economy.
We were told it was.
I think it has been a bit of a sticking plaster on gaping wounds. I think we wouldn't have a social care sector if it wasn't for quote unquote low skilled immigration.
No, but hold on a minute. We heard this.
That would
okay,
be a disaster.
Lots of people.
Look,
No, James. Lots of people say this, like, well, carers are doing those jobs. Are you pretending? Again, this is the madness of this argument. If we didn't have these people coming in from Eastern Europe or Africa or Philippines, whoever, working as carers on low wages, then what? All the little old ladies in this country, all the old men who need care, they would just all be just lying there dead in their care homes. No, they wouldn't. Someone else would do that job, but they do it at a higher wage.
We'd be having to look at higher wages,
yes.
And perhaps
How
that's
awful.
What we should have done.
How awful.
Except our councils are already on the verge of bankruptcy. We haven't been willing to pay what care costs.
Yep.
And the way that we have underpaid for care, and often this leads to awful treatment for vulnerable adults, for older adults. You know, I think we all know people who rely on the care system. And it's underfunded and it's miserable. So because we won't pay for it,
but we would have found
we need
the people.
Immigration to do it.
The care system.
And that's where it's been a sticking plaster.
No, James, this is the thing. But people say the care system would collapse, or the NHS would. No, they wouldn't. None of them would collapse. Or the system would carry on. It would be done in a different way. But here's the thing. You said there were better ways of doing immigration. What are those better ways?
Look, I think we do have to look. My assessment is we can actually take pretty much any level of immigration we want if we are willing to charge for and build the services that they need. You can't have immigration at 900,000 a year or 400,000 a year when you only build 100,000 homes a year. Like, that doesn't work. You can see that the maths doesn't work. And that also then means that schools are overstretched or doctors' surgeries are overstretched. So if you're going to have high immigration, you need to build the infrastructure for high immigration. If you're not going to build the infrastructure, you need lower immigration, and you need to accept that we might then have some skill shortages, or we might have higher wages, we might have inflation problems, we might have lower growth. Now, what we've tried to do for the last decade is have high immigration and not build any of the infrastructure. Yeah. And I think that's actually been bad for everyone involved, because it's not the fault of someone who comes here to work as a care worker that there aren't enough homes. No. You know, they come, they work, they're actually plugging a gap from the bad choices our governments have made. And I think they end up demonised because of those choices. And
I'm not demonising anyone who comes to this country to make a living.
Yeah. My personal stance is I don't personally mind if immigration is high or low if we build the right services and the right infrastructure and if it works for the country. I think what's been broken is we've let it be high and we've not built that infrastructure.
Yeah. And again, that's been since 2000 when Tony Blair just opened the doors wide open to Eastern Europe. I agree with you on all of that. Apart from, you're saying it doesn't matter to you. Now, it does matter to most people whether or not we have a massively churning new arrivals of in terms of the population. It does matter to people whether people who arrive here, not just whether they've got somewhere to live and whether there's another doctor's surgery opening up so they're not having to wait 3 weeks for a doctor's appointment. They would like the people they live next door to, you know, integrate, to speak English. Maybe they could invite them over for a barbecue. You know, that people want to feel that they are living in the country that they grew up in, not in a backward, not in a, we're all waving a flag at the coronation nonsense. I'm talking about Britain remaining Britain and people coming to Britain to contribute, but also assimilating, integrating, accepting British culture, working towards, speaking the language, all of that. But it's interesting because so many, I think, from your side of the argument, you don't really care about that stuff. This is the sort of citizen of nowhere idea, isn't it? It doesn't really matter to you where people are from.
I don't think it's quite true. I think you'd be a bit of a weird person if you said, I don't care if people never learn English or never sort of try and integrate. I think, the best bits of Britain are where we get bits of other cultures and we make them part of British culture.
They aren't. Why do you think that?
Tikka masala as part of a national dish, all of that.
No, that was brought over by Brits from India.
But I think, the people on my side of the argument tend to live in the places that have highest sort of populations born abroad. We live in London. That's got the highest born abroad in the country. Thank you for joining my cat.
I'm going to get hello, cat.
Yep. We have, we live alongside these and we do sort of see these cultures mix. Now, have we done it well? No. Have we got a falling community across this stuff? Yes. You see things like youth groups or community groups that used to get council funding where people came together now rely on one volunteer that's usually a man in his 70s who's worried that the whole thing will fall apart when he dies. I think we put other problems on immigration.
But this is a result. You're saying it doesn't matter whether immigration levels are high or low. You're saying, yes, of course, you want people to integrate. But this is the point. You can't integrate and assimilate people arriving on the scale they've been arriving. Proof is in the pudding. But the thing I just find extraordinary, the number of people who will say the best bits of Britain are where it's basically not very like Britain, where it's diverse. Where you say, I've got lots and lots of friends who've come from abroad, lots and lots of friends who've had a first language or still have first language that is not English, but who are totally assimilated to this country, who wanted to come and live here, whose children, they speak formal English, their children speak fluent English, they accept Britain's laws and culture and are part of the community, which is very, very different from huge numbers of people coming to this country from many different countries, arriving here and going, I'm just going to set up my own country, all the culture, everything, and I'm going to set it up here in Britain. And that is what changes a country. And no, I don't think the East End of London is a wonderful, much better place now because it's largely Bangladeshi than it was when it was largely indigenous white Brits. Nothing to do with the colour of anyone's skin. It's just, why do you think that's better than it was? I don't understand. What's better about it?
I just think it's a nice bit of town. You've got pubs next to mosques. It generally goes fine. It's a good bit of London.
You've got fun runs that women, girls over 12 aren't allowed to join for religious reasons, for Sharia reasons.
Look,
that's great, isn't it? That's Britain. That's Britain. There you are. That's the local community really, really, getting integrated, becoming British, isn't it? Saying,
I'm a humanist. Sorry,
you've started your period, love. You're now fair game, and you no longer have equal rights with men, because that's what the message was on that fun run, wasn't it? That's why over 12-year-old girls weren't allowed to join. But you're happy with that, because that makes Britain better in your view, doesn't it?
No, I'm not. I think, look...
That's what you signed up to.
No, we tolerate religious freedom in this country. We let, within their own sort of private spheres, different religions can practice within limits what they want. I don't think as a state, as official public services, as anything getting public funding, anything should be allowed in there. I'm a humanist. That's where I push from. I don't like that stuff at all.
Should it be illegal?
But I tolerate it.
I don't tolerate it. What if they said no gays? What if they said no gays? No gay people?
No, I obviously oppose that. That would cause me some problems.
Well, no, but you would tolerate it, because I wouldn't.
No, this is why I say within some limits. But, I don't like that where it's fundamental Christian groups doing it. I don't like that when it's fundamental Muslim groups doing it. We agree. I think where you get some problems are where you try and do forced integration. And I think France is worse. Well, no, I think France tries this.
Don't have people come here who don't want to integrate. There's your solution.
France tries this, and it is worse at this than we are. Look, let me say Britain is better than somewhere in Europe. I can't say that. France tries to force a lot of this, and I think actually we are better at integrating than France is. And we don't need A-level English and to teach immigrants Beowulf to do that.
James, the thing is, you shouldn't ever have to force anyone to integrate. If they've come to your country, they should want to integrate. If they don't want to integrate, you shouldn't have them here. Migrants make up 1 in every 6 recipients of universal credit. Most recipients of universal credit, yes, although you can get it while working, most do not work. I mean, it's even people who get it when they are working, stop working. It's almost like they can get something for free. They don't carry on working. I know, it's a mystery why they would do that. But almost 1.3 million migrants were given the benefit in July. That's up from 930,000 just 3 years ago. I mean, the Tories have said they're going to bar foreign nationals from claiming universal credit and other benefits. I think Reform have said the same thing, have they not? It's difficult to keep up with the barrage of announcements we've been having.
No, that's true.
But we are, 141 billion pounds for welfare this year. 141 billion quid. 141 billion quid we don't have, by the way, just in case you were wondering. And the bulk of that goes on universal credit because, Ian Douglas-Smith moved it all onto one benefit.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of those 1.3 million migrants are people who are EU citizens.
Yes.
Who are allowed to stay here. But again, this is the thing. We were told, were we not, that we were benefiting from this mass EU immigration. And again, when they did the actual numbers and people were out, can you apply? You've been here a while, but we just need to know you're here so we can register you and you can continue to stay here after we left. Yeah. And they thought they were about 3 million. They're about 5 million. We didn't even know how many were in the country.
No, and
didn't even know.
No, and that's the real problem. And the majority of them would have been working. So if the majority of them were working, why on earth is the claimant count for universal credit so high? Because surely if they're paying their own way, they don't need to top up with universal credit. We were told that these people were a boon to our society, so that's why we needed to welcome them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I do think we also need to get the correct figures from the DWP because there is some argument about
Work
the
and
data.
Pensions Department, yeah.
Yeah, there is some argument about the data that comes over. You've got this horrible foreign-born category.
Yeah.
Which is me.
You say horrible. She's not being... it's complicated.
It is complicated. The descriptor is not
but
right.
We would think, well, Claire's British, but you were born
Absolutely,
where?
But I was born in Cyprus.
Yeah.
But I am a British citizen. I've got a British passport. My father was in the army.
You were a British citizen from birth?
Absolutely.
I do think that's crucial. British citizen from birth. Have you had to change your nationality or are you... I mean,
No, and I haven't. And it was sovereign territory. It was a sovereign base. So I think
it's good to know we could figure out. No, we can't. But no.
I've got nowhere to go, but I wouldn't mind going to Cyprus. It's quite sunny when you look at the weather outside. But I think that we need some correct data to come through. And also, why are people being allowed to claim universal credit?
Again,
I just don't understand.
I just find it... I mean, people say, why shouldn't these people, if they need help... Again, if I moved to America or to France or to, Australia or anywhere else, I moved those countries and I had a job and I was allowed on the basis I was working and I was allowed there legally, and then I lost my job, I couldn't get another job and I needed help. I'm not sure I would expect the taxpayers of any of those countries to fund my life. Maybe you could say, like, you might be entitled for a few months, but maybe you should be saving up some money for the time in between. And if you can't save up money, it's because you're not earning enough money to be able to support yourself. So I'm sorry, thank you very much, but move on. PMQs is just starting, the first one back after recess. And in just a moment, as soon as we get the first question from Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, we will go to those first clashes between the Tory leader and Keir Starmer. Joining me in the studio for reaction is Claire Pinsell-Still, former Conservative government advisor, and also Peter Cardwell, talk presenter and political commentator.
Hi,
Good
Julia.
afternoon to you. Great to have you in the studio. I've missed you. Keir Starmer's already on his feet answering always that rather pointless first question and then the whole I've got meetings later today, blah, 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 blah. Lots to talk about. So we've got the economy, we've got immigration, what's going on in the Middle East, the China spy case. I have a funny feeling that Kemi Badenoch might do a little bit of Palestinian recognition and a little bit of China spy case. What do you reckon?
I think so, certainly. The Chinese stuff, obviously there's a statement yesterday, but there's a lot more to this, a lot of unanswered questions on why the Deputy National Security Advisor has been thrown under the bus on this. So
and it does seem that every single time the government makes a statement about something, it's then completely questioned by anyone else in the know. So it's not going very well for them so far.
Why are they protecting Jonathan Powell? That's what I want to know. Well,
this is it. Jonathan Powell, of course, putting the Blair band back together, Claire Pearsall. Yes. He was National Security Advisor, I think, what was it? Wasn't he to Cameron as well, but he was also, of course, way back when he was involved with the Blair government.
He was Chief of Staff in the Blair government.
Chief of Staff, he's a hugely influential figure. But they clearly do not want this man to have to go because they've lost so many serious people, and yet the finger keeps pointing at him over pretty much everything that goes wrong in government.
Because the finger also pointed at him over the Peter Mandelson debacle as well. So his hands are not clean, and as much as he's an experienced person in government, he's also also made a fair few mistakes in that time. So I think that it will be interesting to understand why it is they're protecting him. What is it that he knows that nobody else wants to get out? And I suspect there is some pretty deep dirt going on.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on. There's no doubt at all. Well, we've got Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, looking absolutely furious right now, giving someone a very big telling off. So that we were still waiting for Kemi Badenoch to ask her first question. There's no doubt at all. There's a lot of pressure, Peter, on the government right now. Immigration. We've got Shahbaz Mahmood, the Home Secretary, said a meeting of Balkan leaders today, basically admitting that we've lost control of our borders. We've got Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, sort of skulking over to Washington to the IMF summit after we've got some terrible figures on the economy. They're trying to talk them up, but basically you combine the two things: immigration, huge number of people, a couple of million more people arriving in the country, of low-skilled migrants, and our growth figures on GDP. Oh, what a surprise! We've got the lowest growth per head of the population in the G7, the richest countries. Things are not going in the right direction.
And then she gives that interview this morning where she says she's looking at taxes. Taxes may well rise.
It's not really a big surprise.
Well, it's not. But then she gets on a plane and goes to America before she can be asked any further questions. But yes, it's the first admission. We all knew it was going to happen, but it's the first admission, nonetheless, that taxes will almost certainly rise. I mean, they will rise in 6 weeks' time. And the question is, will she break the manifesto pledge? Will Rachel Reeves in 6 weeks' time contradict Rachel Reeves of a year ago? That's my question, because the budget is going to be very brutal for her. And can her credibility survive if she does?
What do you mean, can her credibility survive?
Can any credibility that's left survive?
Long. I mean, genuinely, it's actually embarrassing. I mean, you actually see her speaking, and I'm actually at the point, Claire, with Rachel Reeves, where I almost want to give her a hug. I mean, she's so bad and
don't
so
cry,
useless
Julia.
and
Don't
so
cry.
beautiful. Don't cry. I do not cry. She's so out of her depth. I mean, again, you should at that point leave your job. But then, hey, David Lammy's still in a job, so there we are. By the way, we should have perhaps. Can we go live to the House of Commons, please? Can we just pretty much go to the House of Commons right now, please? Because the Prime Minister Keir Starmer has accused the Conservative Party of baseless accusations surrounding the government's handling of the China spy case, telling the House of Commons, "I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions." He says, "I know just how seriously rightly you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government. We will always defend against espionage. In recent weeks, there have been baseless accusations put about by the party opposite." Let's go live to what he's got to say.
I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited Rayner, a world-leading provider of cataract solutions based in Worthing.
Right, we've managed to miss that bit of the statement. We've now got the utterly pointless first question. We will leave it for now. Look, that's quite interesting, isn't it? To you, Peter, that the Prime Minister's come out fighting like that.
Yes, it is, and certainly in regard to what he is saying, he is being unapologetic in his words. It's interesting as well. Lindsay Hoyle has been very annoyed about this, the fact that this case was dropped. He says that parliamentary...
Because crucially, it was about alleged spying in the Houses of Parliament
by researchers, and there are all sorts of allegations they may have had apps on their phones that had them communicating with the Chinese. There's all sorts of problems that have annoyed an awful lot of people. From Keir Starmer's perspective, clearly the full picture is not out there. Not out there. His argument would be that it can never be, but also the Crown Prosecution Service, two former heads of the civil service, very annoyed.
So, Philip Ingram, is China a threat to Britain's national security or not?
Yes, it is.
There we are. And moving on with the show.
Right. So we don't have to discuss this anymore. It is, without doubt, you're one of the bigger threat actors that are out there. Its primary collection task or a priority is getting economic advantage. China is the second largest economy in the world. UK is the sixth largest economy in the world. It's got links to the United States, links into EU and everything else, and China wants to try and exploit that to gain further economic advantage for itself. At the same time, it's then looking for political advantage and military advantage in a lot of what's going on around the world.
Well, I mean, again, and China won't be the only country doing that.
Oh,
there's no
every country does it to every other country.
Wait a minute, but I mean that they, obviously, Russia's doing it, Iran's doing it. Oh, come on. We've seen evidence recently that we've got America spying on Germany, for goodness sake. I mean, everyone's spying on everyone.
Yes,
so let's not pretend this is what countries do.
Correct.
But particularly when they are hostile nation states. But here's the thing. in this particular case, we've got two men who were accused. They have denied all charges, but the charges have been dropped now. But they have been accused of basically spying for China, handing over documents. One was a parliamentary researcher. This is Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, of handing over documents to China, a hostile nation state, an enemy state. And the whole case seems to hinge on whether or not, at the time these alleged crimes took place, whether or not China was deemed an enemy state. Now, the law has been changed in recent years, in the last couple of years, which changes it. So to prosecute someone under effectively the Official Secrets Act, it has to be handing documents to an enemy state as opposed to just sort of any other state that we're having problems with. That seems to be the crux of the matter. But it all comes down to who knew what when and who had what meetings, because we've got a Prime Minister who appears to be at odds with the Director of Public Prosecutions, that's Stephen Parkinson. Given that the Prime Minister is a former Director of Public Prosecutions, the person in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service, that's quite something. We've got two other former Directors of Public Prosecution who've also basically backed the current one. He seems to be in dispute with the civil service after one of his ministers, Security Minister Dan Jarvis, earlier this week, basically came out and went, oh, no, this decision wasn't made by the National Security Advisor, the political appointee, the special advisor, who is Jonathan Powell, but by the Deputy National Security Advisor, a civil servant, long-standing Matthew Collins. Now, the trouble we've got here is that Matthew Collins appears to be very well respected within the civil service and very well respected by the last Tory government and by many current figures within the Labour government. And so we're getting a lot of information that's coming out here and there. Last night, after Prime Minister's questions, when Kemi Badenoch, all 6 questions, bang, 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 all about this issue, really got quite nasty between the two of them, quite personal. Basically, she's saying, I smell a rat. And the Prime Minister goes, oh, there's nothing. We're going to publish these statements later. They publish the statements. There's not a smoking gun. There's no document that says, let's not give them evidence in this because we'd rather have an economic trade deal with China. There's nothing that obvious. However, there is stuff in these documents, in these evidential statements, that suggests that there was some deliberate attempt to not give the Crown Prosecution Service the evidence they needed and had repeatedly asked for months to get the evidential level over the line to be able to bring a case.
There's a number of things in that. First of all, the Prime Minister turned around and tried to blame this all during the Tory government, but one of the documents he released last night was dated whenever the current government is in place, so he brought it. And you're right, it's down to the subtleties of the law. The Official Secrets Act 1911, which is what the individuals were charged under, defines an enemy as a state that you're effectively at war with, or a state that you're not at war with but considered a future adversary. Now, it's that bit that the government hasn't defined. However, there was a High Court ruling in 2025 that broadened that to be a bigger threat, and that's something that could have easily been tested in court.
Well, this is the thing. I mean,
it's up to the courts to do that.
It's up to a jury to decide. It's the idea that this case, again, I must stress, the two men who were accused do deny any crime.
Yes.
But the idea that this case didn't pass an evidentiary threshold, the fact that they couldn't have got, Richard Diller, we're going to speak to later, I think he'd have been happy as a former MI6 boss to say, yes, he considers China to be a threat. Numerous other people. There are numerous statements by the former government at the time, and this all came up in Prime Minister's questions, what the former Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, had said, what other government members have said, and the Business Secretary, as she now the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch. Everybody has said, China is a threat. Yes. There were numerous documents that stated this. None of this rings true.
It doesn't
so
smell right.
What do we think? Look, bearing in mind, I'm always in favour of the cock-up over the conspiracy as a general rule. But what do we think? What's our best guess about what has actually happened, Philip?
It's very difficult to work out exactly what's happened because it would be so easy for the government to turn around and make a very clear statement to say, the 2023 Act, which is the new National Security Act, has a definition of material assist to foreign intelligence service, but that wasn't applicable because these actions happened before that came into place.
Or alleged actions, yeah.
And the 1911 Act if the government turned around and said, we have had no formal definition during that time, no matter what people have said, it hasn't been formally put in a way that would, in our opinion, cross the bar to make China an enemy to be applicable under that act, full stop, draw a line under it, move on. You know, the fact that the case has collapsed, the intelligence services probably aren't too bothered about that, because they've disrupted the whole of the
They don't want this stuff
operation.
coming out in open court.
And they wouldn't want to reveal it. It's not unusual that if you've got a court case based primarily on data that's coming through intelligence services, they don't want to be quizzed in an open court where a defence barrister can drill into things that they don't want to release. And therefore, it's quite often that they'll get something to the point where it goes to court and then withdraw their evidence.
OK. Here's the thing, though. How much political influence do we think there was? Because one of the things that we are being asked to believe, and various journalists who've been on top of this are basically asking us to believe that for months and months and months, the Crown Prosecution Service was asking this senior civil servant, can you please provide us with the evidence that we believe there has? And we thought there was until a few months ago, but somehow miraculously there isn't. And there are different interpretations of why they've done that. Can you please, we're about apparently said we're 5% short of the threshold. I mean, I know of many cases, as covered as a journalist, which have a lot less evidence than this case. So it's a bit bizarre they're even claiming that. But we need some more evidence, please. So for many, many months, he refuses to reply, doesn't bother mentioning it to anyone, not even over a coffee, not over, you're popping to go to get some water in the kitchen at work, and you don't mention it to your boss, National Security Advisor. By the way, the Director of Public Prosecutions is asking me for more evidence in this high-profile case that's been on the front page of the newspapers over the last couple of years. Really, I mean, I find that incredible in the true sense of the phrase, as in not credible, as in simply never happened.
Correct. Yes. There is something going on that is covering this up, and the fact that the Deputy National Security Advisor did not seek advice from his boss is just wrong. You'll have sought advice from a number of different people. The fact that
he'd be crazy not to, even just to protect himself.
Oh, very much so. And he's competent, and he knows that. And the Security Minister stood up in Parliament and made a statement about this, and then less than 24 hours later, it was proven that he hadn't brought out some of the detail that then came out. And then the Prime Minister says we can't release the evidence, and then he goes and releases the evidence. The government is tying itself in knots here, which all points to there being something that they're trying to hide.
And they're trying to cover up. Could it be as simple as, look, they didn't want this case to go forward because they genuinely thought that it's not going to serve any purpose, and it's going to anger the Chinese. We've already sorted these guys out if they believed they were guilty, and we'd rather get a trade deal because trade is vital to us. And I mean, is it just that simple? And if it is that simple, is that something we should be worried about? Because at the end of the day, look, there's no doubt at all this government is incompetent. We've seen this on an extraordinary level. We're no doubt at all also that many politicians of many political hues are very, very excited about people with money, whether they are rich billionaire donors, whether they're big companies, whether they own Twitter or X, whether they are foreign national governments. We know that our politicians across the board are willing to go, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, to these people. And that is one of our concerns. But when you're in a situation where it looks like that our national security has played second fiddle to, I don't know, £1 billion, nothing, no mark money down the back of the sofa trade deal, that is a concern.
It is a concern, and the government has to balance off, and this is a political decision, the political relationship it has with China, the second largest economy in the world, and ourselves, the 6th largest economy in the world, and both permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations. So it has to do that, but it then has to balance off our relationship with the United States and look at what's going on there. And we are out of step with the United States' view on China and what's going on at the moment. So the government is in a very difficult position and has got a very difficult balancing act. All the decisions in that are political. However, this should come outside the political side of things. It
absolutely should, I mean, also we've got Dominic Cummings. I don't know, how much can you ever trust anything Dominic Cummings says, the former number 10 aide to Boris Johnson? He's
got eyesight difficulties.
Well, exactly. Were you not at a castle for your eyesight problems? But China stole Britain's state secrets for years. He says they used a backdoor into sensitive Whitehall computer systems. The Chinese were allowed to buy a company that controlled a data hub used by government departments to exchange information, including highly classified projects, not some of the most super highly classified, but they basically accessed it for absolute years. So while we're a bit worried about two men who've been accused of passing a couple of documents over, you've got to wonder.
Oh, 100% China will be doing that. China is monitoring the streets of London today through CCTV cameras.
They've hacked.
No, they haven't hacked them, because certain CCTV cameras, when you buy the package, they'll give you a cloud storage package that goes with it. The servers are in continental China. They can run whatever they want on the servers to AI to monitor people wandering around the streets of London,
madness,
without the owners of the camera knowing about it, and without any of the privacy legislation that is applicable in the UK being applied to what the Chinese are doing. They are a significant threat to this country.
I think what we should definitely do is on Tuesday, the government should approve planning permission for them to have a huge, massive, bigger than any other embassy in the country, and indeed the biggest Chinese embassy in pretty much the world.
Very close to the City of London.
Close to the City of London, very, very close within metres of some crucial communication cables. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? And by the way, the planning documents have a whole basement area, a super basement that is completely redacted. We've got no idea what's down there. Oh yeah, we do. I mean, it's just, probably knowing the Chinese, torture chambers. I mean, I'm not being glib. I'm not being glib. They dragged Chinese dissidents off the streets demonstrating outside the Chinese current embassy and dragged them inside. And, goodness knows what happens to them. I mean, we are insane. We are sleepwalking into this stuff.
I was looking at those plans only yesterday in minute detail, and it's not just the embassy itself. It's it's in the centre of the centre of the City of London. There's a lot of people living around the outside of it. The Chinese will be actively surveilling everyone that has got a direct view of the embassy and an indirect view, and they'll be sucking up all of the communications that are going on around the area. So people's personal mobiles, their Wi-Fi's, they will be interfering with people's personal lives the whole way around. This is something that should never be allowed to be put in there.
And it's already been, Town Hamlets Council, the local council, they've already said no. Yeah. And that's a useless council. I mean, my local paper training around there. Oh, I mean, even more so now under Lufter. But I mean, it's just extraordinary. I mean, we are, again, we had a Tory government that were quite happy to hand over sort of 5G to Huawei, a Chinese company. Again, all Chinese-owned companies are completely and utterly beholden to the Chinese government.
Article 7 of the Chinese National Intelligence Act requires all individuals and companies to comply with Chinese intelligence when asked to do so.
And when they are asked to do so, and they do comply. The fact that was thought, nuclear power stations, you name it. I mean, they're supplying most of the cars, the e-cars. They're making all the wind turbines, making the solar panels. They've been involved in the nuclear power. I mean, let's let people who are a hostile nation threat state, let's face it, an enemy state, who are spying on us, who kill their own people for being dissidents, who don't. We saw what they did in Hong Kong, for God's sake. I mean, but by all means, let's let them have control of our critical infrastructure, and let's cozy up to them because we desperately want a trade deal. This is manifestly insane.
Completely insane. And what it's doing is it is undermining the very fabric of our industrial society, our research society, and all the rest of it. It's no.
Oh yeah, I mean they are spying on. I mean basically they make a load of things, but they completely ignore all sort of patent law and copyright law.
They steal the plans. They'll manufacture it. They then can sell it where they don't have to put the cost of developing it onto it,
which we pay for,
which we pay for, and they can sell it cheaper. And that's what they do, and that's why they flood the market. And we're sitting there going, but we invented this, and that's out there. And that's been proven time after time.
Utter madness. Utter madness. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because the government, the Prime Minister, the Civil Service and the Crown Prosecution don't appear to know whether or not China is a threat to Britain's national security. Do you know? Do you have any clue? Do give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You're also welcome to call in on any other topic as well. Not that we've got to another topic, but I do want to get onto one or two very, very, very briefly. One is Rachel Reeves' budget. It's coming up. It's kind of racing towards us 6 weeks' time on November the 26th. And Rachel Reeves has done various interviews ahead of and after arriving at the IMF summit meeting in Washington. And basically she said, yes, that taxes on the rich will be part of the story of the budget. But don't worry, rich people won't leave. leave. I mean, they've got super yachts, love. They've got homes in other countries. They absolutely will leave. How do we know this? Because in every country that has done more taxes on the rich, they do leave. Now, you know, the reality is very rich people are not like the rest of us. One, they're very rich. Two, they're very, very mobile.
Yeah. And the UK has lost more wealthy people than only one other country in the world, and that's
which is that?
China. Over the last year. And you know,
even Russia hasn't lost as many as us.
Exactly. And Rachel Reeves, it's interesting coming up to this budget. You know, she blames the Tories and said over 14 years of Tory control, they've left a £22 billion black hole. The black hole she's now talking about is £40 billion. So in less than 18 months, she's added another 18
But again,
billion
it's this
to
idea,
it.
people need, this whole idea the wealthy need to pay their fair share of tax. The top 1% pay 30% of income tax in this country. I don't know, what would be a fair... I mean, the top rate of income tax is 45 pence in the pound, plus... plus national insurance on a good whack of that first income. I don't... How... I mean, is that not enough? Is that not enough?
And then the wealthy people tend to be running companies that are employing lots of people and are paying more tax. They tend to buy lots of high net worth goods. So they pay an awful lot of VAT. They tend to buy big houses, so there's stamp duty and everything else.
They're spending money all the time. But this is a crucial thing for me as well. I know a lot of people who are very rich. I know a lot of people who are probably going to be hit if there are wealth taxes. The thing is, to a man and a woman, they've done it on their own. They come from ordinary background. Now, there are plenty of rich people who've inherited everything, but they're not, you know...
But that's not the majority.
They're not the majority. And even in America, and again, as well, and as well, most people, they've done it on their own. If someone has got wealthy and has done well because they have worked really, really hard, and I mean the stress levels that they mortgaged their home to start a business. They made something or provided a service that we want to buy. They're employing people. They built that company. I'm intensely relaxed about those people earning a shed load of money. I want them to be taxed. I think they should be taxed at a reasonable rate. I'm of the view that when your overall tax rate is over 50%, I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong. I think it's disincentive. But they're already paying a hell of a lot of tax, and we need them to stay here, and they will leave. I know people who have left. We know what happened when France put in a 70% tax on higher income. Literally thousands of the wealthiest people left. They leave the country and they don't come back until that tax disappears, and so you lose all of their taxes. It's absolute madness. I mean, but they're going to do it anyway. Just find it. One other thing, Prince Andrew, Virginia Giuffre, late Virginia Giuffre, who was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein and many of the men that he flew on his was it Lolita Express and went to his rape island. Let's call it what it was, rape island. And she's always claimed that she had sex with Prince Andrew on 3 occasions when she was 17 years old, not below the age of consent in this country, but she says she was trafficked by Prince Andrew, and she was told she'd done a good job and was given money even after having sex with Prince Andrew. He's always denied having sex with her, and denied that he ever met her, despite the photograph of them together with Ghislaine Maxwell, now behind bars for her role in those crimes. But also, because he never had sex with her, but he paid her about 10 million quid. The way you do to people you've never met who claim they've had sex with you. She's got a new book out. It's her memoirs. It's out after her very sad suicide. A very common thing, sadly, among victims of sexual abuse, and a very troubled woman, as you would be after that life. But she says Prince Andrew felt sex with me was his birthright. This story will not go away, but neither will Prince Andrew. He refuses to skulk into the background. He clearly still thinks he's done nothing wrong, despite paying 10 million quid to the woman who claims he did.
Yeah, and this is where his brother, the King, I think will stand up and push him even further back. But it was interesting to see the body language between Prince Andrew and Prince William when they were together last. It's quite clear that if the King doesn't step up whenever Prince William becomes king, he will make sure that Andrew is put into the Tower.
Yeah, absolutely.